I was just meant to drop off a Popeyes order and go. But her eyes, heavy with midlife's quiet pain, held mine, and she whispered, "If you dare stay." I had no clue that minutes later my world would shift entirely because of one woman, one night, and one question etched in my soul. What followed still lingers in me. If you've ever met someone who reshaped your life in a moment, then vanished before you understood why this story's for you. Tap like to support raw emotional storytelling and subscribe if you believe one soft challenge can change everything. My name is Liam, and I'm 23 years old, just another face weaving through the humid, moss-draped streets of Savannah, Georgia. This summer, I've been doing something I never pictured myself doing, delivering Popeye's orders as part of a college internship program. It's not glamorous, far from it. It's a side gig, something to keep my bank account from flatlining while I figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life. But if I'm honest, it's also a way to keep my thoughts from spiraling. The routine of driving, dropping off spicy chicken sandwiches, and heading back to my car gives me something to hold on to when everything else feels like it's slipping. Savannah is a city that feels like it's holding its breath. It's beautiful in a quiet, soulful way. Cobblestone streets, historic squares, framed by live oaks, and the faint hum of blues spilling out from corner bars. The air is thick with the scent of river water and magnolias, and the humidity clings to your skin like a second shirt. There's a slowness here, a rhythm that makes you think time might just take a nap under the Spanish moss. Some evenings, as I drive past Forsyth Park, I catch myself wondering what it would feel like to belong in a place like this, to have roots instead of just passing through. But most days, I'm just a delivery guy, a temporary blip in someone else's story. My life isn't much to write home about. I live in a cramped apartment above a bakery where the smell of fresh bread sneaks through the floorboards and the walls creak with every step. My roommate's gone most of the time, leaving me with too much space to think. College feels like a maze I'm wandering through without a map. My major business, because it seemed practical, doesn't spark anything in me. My friends are drifting, caught up in their own lives, and I'm left with this nagging sense that I'm floating, untethered, waiting for something to anchor me. I'm good at pretending I've got it together, but inside it's like I'm stuck in a fog watching the world move while I stay still. That's how it was on that Wednesday evening, the kind of night where Savannah seemed to glow under a dusky amber sky. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the city in soft hues that made even the cracked sidewalks look like they belonged in a poem. I was on my last delivery of the night, a Popeyes combo extra cornbread headed to an address in Ardsley Park. It's one of those neighborhoods you don't see often as a delivery driver. Elegant, quiet, with tree-lined streets and colonial homes that seem to whisper history. The kind of place where porch swings sway gently and wind chimes hum instead of clang. I followed the GPS through winding roads, the city fading into a hush as I pulled up to a house that looked like it had stepped out of a storybook. It wasn't ostentatious, just timeless black shutters, wisteria climbing the brick walls, a front porch with a lone wicker chair that seemed to hold secrets of its own. I grabbed the warm bag from the passenger seat, walked up the stone path, and knocked twice, the sound swallowed by the evening stillness. The door opened, and I forgot how to move. She stood there, Elise, though I didn't know her name yet. She was older, maybe in her early 50s, with dark blonde hair falling in loose waves over a navy shawl. Her face held no trace of makeup, but her presence was arresting, like the air itself paused to take her in. Her eyes, steady and warm, carried a quiet weight, the kind that comes from years of living through joy and loss. They locked onto mine, and for a moment, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Your order? I managed my voice catching. She took the bag, her fingers brushing mine for a fleeting second. Then, in a voice soft as the evening breeze, she said, "If you dare stay." I blinked, my heart stumbling. Did I hear that right? She didn't smile or look away, just watched me, her gaze calm but piercing, like she already knew what I'd do. My face burned, thoughts scrambling. The bag was gone from my hands, but her words hung in the air, daring me to step into something unknown. I I should finish my shift, I stammered, glancing at the porch steps. She nodded, a faint flicker of amusement in her eyes. Fair enough. The door closed, and I stood there rooted as her voice echoed in my head, "If you dare stay." Something about that moment, the house, her eyes, those words felt like the start of something I couldn't yet name. A week had passed since that strange evening delivering Popeyes, but Elise's words, "If you dare stay," still echoed in my mind, refusing to fade. I tried to dismiss it as a fleeting moment, a quirky encounter to laugh off. But her voice, her eyes, the way she seemed to see straight through me, lingered like the humidity of Savannah. I was 23, adrift in a life that felt more like a rehearsal than the real thing. And somehow, that one sentence had cracked something open. That afternoon, the Savannah sun broke through the usual haze, casting golden light across Chippewa Square. I'd taken to walking there when my thoughts grew too loud. A quiet spot near campus where live oaks draped in Spanish moss framed the paths, and the faint strum of a street musician's guitar softened the air. My earbuds were in music, drowning out the world, when a figure caught my eye. I froze. It was her, Elise. She moved slowly along a gravel path, hands tucked into a taupe coat, her dark blonde hair catching the light like spun gold. She looked exactly as I remembered, poised, almost otherworldly, like she belonged to a painting. I panicked, looked down, fumbled with my phone, but she'd seen me. A smile spread across her face, not the cryptic half-smile from that night, but something warm, inviting. She approached unhurried. "You look familiar," she said, her eyes twinkling with recognition. My throat tightened. I delivered your Popeyes last week," I stammered. Her smile widened. "The delivery guy who bolted?" I laughed, awkward, but relieved. "I wasn't sure if you meant it." She tilted her head. "I did." Then, after a beat, she added, "Are you free right now?" I wasn't, not really, but my feet didn't care. "Walk with me," she said, her voice soft but firm, like a challenge wrapped in an invitation. We fell into step, the crunch of gravel underfoot, blending with the distant hum of Savannah's evening pulse. She asked about my life, college, the internship, what I wanted from the future. I admitted I didn't know, that I felt like I was floating, waiting for something to make sense. She listened, not with pity or judgment, but with a quiet intensity that made me feel heard for the first time in months. Elise shared her story in return. She'd been an art curator, she said, widowed 5 years ago. Her husband's death had unraveled her, and she'd come to Savannah to rebuild piece by piece. She spoke of old novels she loved, of blues records that carried her through lonely mornings, of a life she was still learning to navigate. Her honesty, her willingness to lay bare her wounds, disarmed me. I told her I'd never met anyone like her. She didn't blush, just said, "You haven't been looking." As the light faded, she stopped, pulled a small notebook from her bag, and scribbled something. She tore off the page and handed it to me, her number. "I don't do this often," she said, her gaze steady, "but you feel worth it." Then she walked away, leaving me clutching the paper, heart pounding. 3 days later, after endless debates with myself, I called. Her voice answered warm and steady, and we planned dinner for Friday at a bistro near the Savannah River. The place was cozy, low lights, wooden tables, the clink of wine glasses. I arrived early, palms sweaty, second-guessing my button-up shirt. When Elise walked in wearing a charcoal dress, her hair loose, I forgot how to speak. "You look nervous," she teased, sitting down. "You look incredible," I blurted, earning a soft laugh. The night unfolded like a dream. We talked about books, music, dreams we'd buried, regrets we carried. She told me about a painting that broke her heart once. I shared a poem I'd written in high school, one no one else had read. The conversation flowed as easily as the wine, each word pulling us closer. When we stepped outside, the riverfront air, cool and damp, neither of us was ready to say goodbye. She looked at me, her eyes searching. "Want to come to my place?" she asked, pausing. "Just to talk. Or not. Only if you're ready." There was no pressure, just an open door. I nodded, my fear melting under her gaze. Her apartment on the second floor of a historic building was a world of its own, worn wooden floors, shelves stuffed with books, a Nina Simone record spinning softly. We sat on a plush sofa, sipping peppermint tea, talking until words gave way to silence. Her hand brushed mine, and we kissed, slow, gentle, like something broken being stitched back together. It wasn't rushed or hungry, just real. In that moment, I felt alive, seen whole. I woke to the soft hum of a Nina Simone record and the faint aroma of fresh coffee drifting through the air. For a moment, I didn't move, just lay there, wrapped in a quilt, on Elise's plush sofa, the morning light filtering through gauzy curtains in her Savannah apartment. The room was bathed in a gentle glow, gold and gray, mingling on the worn wooden floors, the shelves stuffed with books and vinyls. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, but safe, like a pause between heartbeats. Last night had been a blur of warmth. Our slow kiss, the way her touch felt like it was stitching something broken inside me, the hours of conversation that made me feel alive. I couldn't quite believe it was real, but the lingering warmth in my chest told me it was. Elise was in the kitchen, barefoot, her robe loosely tied, moving with a deliberate grace that seemed to savor the moment. She glanced over her dark blonde hair, catching the light, and smiled a soft, unguarded smile that made my heart skip. "Morning," she said, her voice as warm as the mug she handed me. "Morning," I replied, my voice rough from sleep. We stood there, sipping coffee in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. There was no awkwardness, just an unspoken ease, like we'd known each other far longer than a few days. I wanted to ask what this meant, where it was going, but the moment felt too delicate for questions. I let it be. When it was time to leave, I pulled on my jacket, slowly reluctant to break the spell. Elise walked me to the door, her eyes meeting mine with that same steady gaze that had stopped me in my tracks a week ago. "Call me Liam," she said gently, her voice carrying a quiet promise. I nodded, something unfamiliar, but welcome swelling in my chest. "I will," I said, and I meant it. As I stepped into the creaky staircase, the scent of jasmine lingering in the hall, I felt lighter than I had in years, like I'd finally found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. I waited a day before texting her, wanting to give her space but unable to stop thinking about her. Had an amazing time. Hope you're okay. I wrote simple and honest. No reply came. I told myself she was busy, maybe caught up in her own world. 2 days passed, then 3. The silence gnawed at me, but I brushed it off. On the 5th day, I sent another message. "Thinking of you, just checking in, nothing." My stomach twisted a sinking feeling I couldn't name. I called, holding my breath as it rang. Voicemail. I tried again the next day. Same result. The quiet was deafening, each unanswered attempt, chipping away at the warmth I'd carried from her apartment. By the end of the week, I couldn't ignore the weight in my chest. It wasn't anger, more like a bruise, tender and confusing. I had to know. On a cloudy Sunday afternoon, with Savannah cloaked in a gray that felt like a warning, I drove back to her building near Wright Square. The air was thick, the promise of rain hanging heavy. I climbed the narrow stairs, each step slower, heavier, my pulse loud in my ears. At her door, I knocked, holding my breath. No answer. I knocked again, louder, almost pleading. Nothing. I pressed my ear to the door, desperate for any sound, a footstep, a record spinning. The apartment felt hollow, like it had been empty for days. I stumbled downstairs to the leasing office, my heart racing. A tired woman, with glasses, looked up from her desk. "I'm looking for a lease," I said, voice shaky. "Second floor corner unit." She flipped through her records, frowning. "Ms. Harper. She moved out last week. Paid through the month, no forwarding address." I blinked, the words not sinking in. "You're sure?" I asked, grasping at straws. "Honey, I locked the door myself. She's gone." I walked outside, the world blurring around me. Across the street, her window, once alive with lamplight and blues, was dark, curtainless, a void where warmth used to be. Elise was gone. No goodbye, no note, no trace. The hollowness spread through me, a quiet ache that wasn't quite pain, but something deeper. I wasn't mad at her. I couldn't be. I just didn't understand. Why let me in, share so much only to vanish? For days, I wrestled with it, replaying every moment, searching for clues. But slowly, I began to see it differently. Elise's brief presence, her voice, her touch, they'd shaken me awake. She'd shown me I could feel hope connect. Even if she was gone, that change stayed like a light left on inside me. Elise's absence left a quiet wound, not sharp enough to bleed, but deep enough to ache. For days after I learned she'd moved out of her Savannah apartment, I wandered through my life like it was underwater. Everything muted, slower, heavier. The streets of Savannah, with their cobblestone paths and Spanish moss, felt less vibrant without the possibility of her around a corner. I kept my phone close, hoping for a text, a call, even a glitch that would bring her name to the screen. But it stayed silent, and so did I. I stopped mentioning her to friends, avoided Chippewa Square, and steered clear of the bistro by the river. Yet no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about her, her voice, her laugh, the way she listened. Like my words mattered. I wasn't angry. I was confused, carrying a hurt that felt too fragile to name. At first I wrestled with why. Why had Elise let me in? Shared her world only to vanish without a trace. I replayed our night together, the Nina Simone record, the peppermint tea, the slow kiss that felt like a promise, searching for something I'd missed. But the more I thought, the less it made sense. Maybe that was the point. One night, in the stillness of my cramped apartment above the bakery, I opened my journal for the first time in months. Not to write poetry or unsent letters, but to anchor what she'd left behind. I scribbled every detail I could recall: the flicker of candlelight in her apartment, the way she stirred her tea, the warmth of her hand brushing mine. Writing it down wasn't about letting go. It was about holding on not to her, but to what she'd awakened in me. A week later, I found something that changed everything. Tucked in the pocket of the jacket I'd worn that night was a small folded card, plain white, unmarked. I opened it, my breath catching. In neat, delicate handwriting was a quote. Some people arrive to show you what your heart can still hold. No signature, no explanation. Just those words, like a whisper from her. I stared at it, the weight of its meaning sinking in. I slid the card into my journal, pressing it between the pages like a leaf I wanted to keep forever. It was fragile, but it was enough. That note, those words, shifted something in me. I began to see Elise not as someone who'd left, but as someone who'd arrived exactly when I needed her. At 23, I'd been drifting, feeling invisible, like life was a movie I was watching through glass. Elise changed that. In just a few days, through a walk in Chippewa Square, a dinner by the river, a night of shared stories, she'd shown me I could still feel hope connect. She'd stirred something dormant, a spark I thought I'd lost. Her presence, however brief, had been a mirror reflecting a version of myself. I'd forgotten someone capable of being seen, of mattering. The truth settled in slowly, like Savannah's evening fog. Some people don't come into your life to stay. They come to wake you up, to remind you what's possible. Elise wasn't meant to be a chapter that lasted. She was a moment vivid and fleeting that left me different. I used to think love or connection had to be permanent, to mean something. I'd clung to ideas of forever believing that was the only way a story could matter. But Elise taught me otherwise. A single night, a single touch, a single sentence. If you dare stay, could carry more weight than years with someone else. Courage, I realized, isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go. Letting go of the need for answers, of the urge to chase what's gone, of the wish to understand why. I don't know why Elise left. Maybe she was rebuilding moment by moment, and our moment had to end. Maybe she was afraid, or maybe she'd given me exactly what she was meant to, a glimpse of what my heart could still hold. I'm not the same Liam who knocked on her door with a Popeyes bag. I'm not as lost, not as afraid to feel. I still think of her sometimes, when a blues song plays when I pass a bookstore, with fogged up windows, when the Savannah River glints under the moon. I wonder if she thinks of me. But I don't need to know. What matters is that I carry her with me, not as a weight, but as a light. She showed me that even the briefest connections can be real, can be enough. And that's a lesson I'll hold on to quietly, carefully, maybe even forever. Have you ever met someone who reshaped your soul in a fleeting moment? Not a lifelong presence, not someone you expected, but someone who stirred something deep, rekindled hope, trust, or feeling. Perhaps a stranger, or someone you loved, but couldn't hold. Maybe like Elise, they appeared when you least expected and left before you grasped their meaning. Share your story in the comments. Someone needs it tonight. If this tale moved you, tap. Like to spread it and subscribe for more. Some stories aren't just heard, they're carried quietly, carefully, perhaps forever.